Now, so our group is empowerment versus care. My name is Emily. I will be in charge of the introduction. I will also be working with Yvette on the care side of the debate. Sierra, Jacqueline, and Jasmine will be working on the empowerment side. Jacqueline will be in charge of our illustrations, and Jessica will be in charge of the conclusion and the questions after the debate. As individuals with autism transition into adulthood, their family and friends are concerned about what will happen to them. Questions come up as to what the best way to support them will be. Do they want to go to college? Will they be able to get a job? And the biggest question, will they be able to make it on their own? With a growing definition of empowerment and what that means to individuals, there arises the question of how to empower those with disabilities who may not be able to make typical decisions that individuals without disabilities make on a regular basis. There is a debate whether or not individual empowerment should be the focus of treatment, or should treatment be based on what is considered the best care for the individual. This debate will discuss the ethical components of both sides.
So to begin with, adults with disabilities are not afforded the same opportunities as those without in determining what happens to them following high school. So this means that we need programs and treatment that can empower them, and given the appropriate supports for developing a strong understanding of the preparation that is required for transition, individuals with disabilities have shown great improvements in both their independence and their self-esteem. So evidence for this comes from the Better Outcomes and Successful Transitions for Autism program, otherwise known as the Boost A. So this is an online program that is strengths-based, and it was developed in Australia. This program aids in transitioning to the workforce for kids that are in high school. So it's going to identify the strengths, personal interests, life skills, goals, and help determine where they would best fit in a program, career, or otherwise some sort of activity following their high school experience. 90% of the students and parents who were involved in this program said that they would recommend this program or something similar to it to others to engage in to help their transition process. Typical outcomes included reduction of fear regarding what is following high school, feeling more courageous and taking on that big task of transition, and also feeling empowered and independent. This feeling of independence brings empowerment to individuals with disabilities, and this empowerment plays a very important role in finding employment, which is also proven to show many positive benefits. A few of these include access to socially valuable roles, purpose or structure to daily life, so they have a reason to wake up in the morning, a job to be at, a schedule to work around, social links with the community, they can make friends outside of home and their work, meeting people they might not have otherwise. They make meaningful choices and opportunities. They have more responsibility and options for things that they can engage in throughout their lifetime and their daily schedule. And financial benefits. So they could go on a trip if they chose to do so, buy things that they like to buy, or even move out eventually if they reach that level of independence. A really great quote that I found that I wanted to share about this is from Ryan in DC. And they say that autonomy is an important precursor to self-determination and occurs when adolescents are provided with choices, their feelings, and their decisions are acknowledged. So this goes without saying that individuals with and without disabilities deserve that feeling of self-determination and being provided those choices and having their feelings and decisions valued throughout these kind of processes. And it's our job as behavior analysts to make this research known to help others learn about the positive aspects of employing individuals who have autism spectrum disorders or other disabilities, and also benefits of helping increase the level of independence for those who do have disabilities. Jacqueline has some great illustrations to share.
All right, so in table 6, we see that the top 3 things that come with satisfaction with independence and engagement are your living arrangements, friendships, and family life. 60% of the people in the survey were employed full-time, if you look at table 7. And then in table 9, we talk about some of the reasons why participants didn't work, and those were because they were part of a training program such as Boost A to find a job in the workforce. Some are unable to find a job, possibly discrimination or lack of training. And some other reasons keeping them from the workforce could be severity of disability or chronic health issues, or some simply don't want a job. And this is a graph from Curtis, Rabin, and Riley's post-school outcomes. This was referenced by Sierra in her earlier comments.
Though Sierra brings up a great point, I would also like to point out that some individuals with disabilities, including autism, are never going to be able to maintain a job or live what we would consider a normal life without professional intervention. As professionals, we are supposed to use the least restrictive measures. However, sometimes that means a residential facility. In a study by Lowton and Els in 2010, they quote something in regards to substitute decision making, which says, "For momentous and complex decisions, although some of us prefer to act primarily on our own, most of us tend to rely on some form of assistance. Individuals who are without support outside of therapeutic settings may need professionals to help make decisions." And an example of, substitute decision making might be dietary restrictions or dietary needs. Also, in a residential facility, it doesn't mean that the individuals aren't making their own decisions. There have been several studies that show there are other ways to maintain autonomy within a residential setting. For example, using cards as a way for individuals to discuss their behavioral needs. And Jacqueline has evidence supporting my claim.
All right, so this is a graph, and it has the 3 main reasons why there are substitute decision-making in residential centers. Some are life planning, such as house outings, holiday planning, daycare. Others are health interventions, like getting your vaccines or managing medications. And some are just everyday decisions, such as personal and intimate care and choosing clothes and dressings. This graph is from Dunn et al., who Emily references earlier in her argument. And I have another graph on the characteristics of proxy healthcare making. This one was from Fisher et al., and in their thing, they found that 50% of people in residential facilities have to have a surrogate healthcare decision made for them once a month. 95% of the time, the decisions are made over a one-on-one discussion with the client, and a majority of the participants are almost always involved in the decision-making process. And the healthcare providers feel confident that they made decisions that align with the client's wishes.
Discriminating individuals who have more severe disabilities is not only against the law but unethical. If that individual has a professional helping them in daily tasks or other decisions, a professional will help them also receive a job or post-school opportunities. It is up to the employers to work with the professionals to help that individual receive employment opportunities. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, has laws set in place that protect individuals with special needs and severe disabilities. The Title III of the ADA prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in the activities of places of public accommodation, businesses that are generally open to the public and fall into one of the 12 categories listed in the ADA, like restaurants, movie theaters, schools, recreational facilities, and doctor's offices. And these places, you see a lot of individuals with disabilities applying to these places. Also, as well as commercial facilities that are non-residential facilities like factories, warehouses, office buildings. You see individuals with disabilities applying to these too. All of these places comply with the ADA standards. The places that were labeled in this law is where many individuals with disabilities look for a job. So not only is it the responsibility of the employee to assist individuals in getting a job, but they have to give them a fair shake as well by not discriminating them because of their disability. Carter, Austin, and Trainer have a great article called The Predictors of Post-School Employment Outcomes for Young Adults with Severe Disabilities, saying that one promising avenue for informing the design and delivery of transition education and employment preparation for youth with severe disabilities involves examining factors associated with improved early post-school outcomes. The extent to which students with severe disabilities enter the workforce after exiting high school can provide an important metric for gauging the impact of existing transition services and supports. Jacqueline has a great illustration that will also support my claim to this.
All right, guys, this illustration is from the Erskine Green Training Institute in Muncie, Indiana. This is a local example for me of how professionals are helping individuals with disabilities find employment at the EGTI. Students are trained at the Institute and then practice their newly learned vocational skills in the community. The Courtyard Marriott of Muncie, Three Wiseman Brewing Company, and IU Ball Memorial Hospital all have a partnership with the Training Institute to help students perfect their skills and practice. And students live at the hotel while they learn this, and while they're there, they also work on transportation skills, learning how to access their community. And when they're done with the program and they graduate, they work with a job coach to help find them a job in the hospitality industry that they were trained in.
Young people usually find issues obtaining a job in general. Most young people, even without disability. However, individuals with disabilities do disproportionately report more difficulties than their typical peers, even with the help of others. The state-funded vocational rehabilitation services are available to all that qualify and do support employment opportunities for those individuals. The benefits outside of employment can help individuals, and some of these benefits are only offered if a certain amount of employment cannot be obtained. So if you are eligible under the Social Security, you can't do work that you used to do before. They decide whether you can adjust to work, and a lot of individuals with autism do typically find some aspect of work to be something where they cannot function fully. Under the state vocational rehabilitation services, they decide that the services that they provide must be consistent with the individual's unique strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, capacities, interests, and informed choices, exposing them to employment that is probably not better just because they have better pay might be unethical because it just isn't in their capacity, or it's outside of their resources. So service providers are not disempowering individuals, but allowing them to thrive in the conditions that are best for them. In fact, adults with ASD using vocational rehabilitation services were more likely to be competitively employed and more likely to receive on-the-job supports than those with other developmental disabilities. And Jacqueline does have some evidence.
Hey everybody, this is some evidence that backs up the claims that Yvette's making. This is about people in the United States receiving vocational rehabilitation services. Look at some of the demographics. 84% of people with autism who are receiving these services are male. 84% of them are white. 73% of them are under the age of 25, over 18 because they're adults. And most of them it's about a 50-50 shot of whether some are employed and some aren't.
Obtaining government funding should not be the only source of income that an individual needs. Not all individuals are young white men like the graph shows above. From the illustration that was just presented, it shows that individuals who are Black and also multiracial do not get these services that need to be provided to them. We need to address all people with disabilities, severe or not. Employers need to give opportunities and transition services like vocational rehabilitation to all individuals. We should not limit an individual to government funding that isn't even going to really help them with therapy bills they will have and other extra services they need as an individual with severe disabilities. These kids have the access to these opportunities in school, but employers will not help them in a natural setting. Bottom line, discriminating individuals in any way, shape, or form is not okay. The Rehabilitation Act from the ADA is an act that helps individuals with special needs get the employment that they deserve as an American citizen. It is a job of the employer to hold up to their end of this act. There were many articles that found that a fairly small proportion of young adults with severe disabilities were working up to 2 years after high school, and almost half were working in segregated settings. The findings also reported in this article provide that additional empirical support for calls to ensure that all youth with severe disabilities access these critical experiences in school, and not just the majority race and gender as well. Jacqueline also has a great illustration that will support me.
All right, everybody, this is a graph that I found really fascinating that backs up Jasmine's claim about people not getting jobs, or people with disabilities not getting jobs. And this article from the Journal of Occupational Rehabilitation asked people, or asked employers and other professionals why they thought other employers might not hire or retain potential employees with disabilities. And their top 3 concerns, as you can see from the graph, is that they're worried about the cost of accommodations, not understanding the needs of their employees with disabilities, or fearing a lawsuit if they have to discipline or fire an employee with a disability. Something that I found interesting is reason number 10, which says that about 50% of people think that they don't employ or retain people with disabilities because they discriminate, which is still shocking. Yeah, there's stuff that's 84 or 80% more, but 50% is still 1 in every 2 employers discriminate against people with disabilities.
There are limitations to employment for individuals with disabilities with government funding, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not allowed to have some kind of income or be employed in any way. However, to put them in a place where they would lose benefits because of employment would be unethical, because it would remove them from being functioning in society. They would lose things like disability income, supplemental income, Medicaid. Those are things that do help these individuals who are disproportionately being disemployed compared to their typical peers. The amount of research that is available to support adults with ASD is also super limited. And however, because we are more aware in general, employers are also becoming more aware of the diversity of the workforce that they are employing, including individuals with a study by Scott et al. Examined employers' perspectives on employing individuals with ASD, and they showed mostly positive views. More than half of the sample employed 1 or more individual with ASD, and a third reported that they the reason that they hired these individuals were because they were being contacted by a disability employment service provider that is similar to vocational rehabilitation services. And only 11% reported that they were directly approached for employment by the employee themselves. So these adults with autism aren't going out and getting jobs on their own. Leaving them to do this on their own might put them at risk. Being competitively employed would mean that that they would be receiving more than the minimum wage, and they would lose the benefits that would pay for their other services, their social skills training that they would need for their job. Back to the study, they reported an overall positive impact on employing individuals with ASD in the workplace, especially in increasing ASD awareness. A majority of these employers would recommend employing an employee with ASD. And although employees with ASD earn slightly lower, it was a marginal difference of $1.65 compared to employers without ASD. And Jacqueline does have some illustrations.
Guys, so this first illustration backs up a point that Yvette said earlier about Social Security disability income benefits. With benefits, you're only, like she said, allowed to make up to $1,180 a month. And so with those benefits, only 20% of the people with disabilities receiving those are in poverty. But if you work full-time, which if you make above a certain amount of money, you work full-time, you're required to do things like pay, your insurance doesn't cover certain things, so you're required to pay out of pocket, especially for disability service. So 51% live in poverty. And with a federal loophole, people with disabilities can be paid less than minimum wage. The second one I have was about the impact of having a person with autism in the workplace. And this is from a study that talked about earlier from SETAC. And some of the interesting points made in this graphic is that having an employee with autism in the workplace didn't harm productivity, brought new and creative skills, and it helped make a positive change in the workplace culture. And something really fascinating that I found was that 0 people in this study reported a decrease in productivity by hiring a person with autism. All right, guys. So for my point, I was gonna, individuals may face hardships in the natural world. They may also face certain hardships, even with victimization in a residential center. There have been studies that show that individuals with disability are at risk for abuse at home and in residential centers. However, abuse is 3 times more likely in a residential facility than it is at home. Abuse of individuals with intellectual disabilities is 2 to 5 times more likely than the general population. They're a vulnerable population. Physical, communication, and social deficits can make them easy targets for perpetrators. 68% of women with intellectual disabilities have experienced sexual abuse in a residential facility. A lack of sexual education for individuals with autism has also led to an increased rate of victimization. Brown, Lavoie, Vaselli, and Weiss found in their study that a perceived knowledge or lack thereof increases the rate of victimization for people with autism. This is also the topic for an NPR news piece, which highlighted a program in Maine called Momentum, which is teaching people with disabilities boundaries or sexual boundaries, what's an okay touch, etc., and helping people define what they want in a relationship. Some people with autism may have a difficult time deciphering between safe and unsafe individuals, behaviors, and situations. and a perceived relationship between a person with autism and a service provider can lead to coercion or unwanted sexual contact. And I have a illustration for you. All right, so this is a graphic from the study that I was just mentioning, and it shows that the 68.8% of women have been sexually abused. And if you go down to living in services versus living with a family or living with others, 63.6% of people have experienced sexual abuse.
I think we can all agree that victimization is a serious problem, and especially when it comes to victimization within residential settings, including sexual abuse or even bullying, any sort of victimization. I would like to point out, though, that there are ways that providers and agencies can decrease that, and it's up to providers and trained professionals to help with things like education when it comes to reporting abuse or violence. In Wales, there is the No Secret program that looks at how multiple agencies need to come together to protect individuals with disabilities, and they've included residential facilities, police, and policymakers. And they talk a lot about communities coming together and creating better policies and better ways to address victimization, including improving consistency, making sure that victims are being heard and things are being reported in a timely manner, and engaging all stakeholders, including engaging local education authorities and independent sector providers. And it should be viewed as a priority to create policies for individuals who are more vulnerable to being a victim. I would also like to point out the importance of advocacy groups. In a study done by Chloe Jordan called The Evolution of Autism Support and Understanding via the World Wide Web, she talks about the increase in advocacy groups online. And though we all know that there's a lot of advocacy groups provided by individuals who have ASD, they point out that a problem is miscommunication and misleading information. So it's important that caregivers lead a lot of these advocacy groups, or professionals lead these advocacy groups, because they are making sure that the information is not misleading anyone, there's no misdiagnosis, or there's no issues with the efficiency or integrity of treatments. And Jacqueline has evidence supporting my.
Right, everybody. This is from the study that Emily mentioned earlier with the No Secret policy in Wales. And in the United Kingdom, social services and the National Health Service have 94% of their agencies with a policy to protect individuals with disabilities against sexual victimization. And the independent agencies, only 55% of them had a policy against sexual victimization. And to me, that's very disappointing and concerning.
There are a number of programs and agencies that try to ensure that individuals with disabilities are legally afforded the same rights and opportunities as everyone else. However, they do not always receive the same opportunities. It is important to note that rehabilitation services, families, and professionals must all work together to provide individuals with disabilities the best possible outcome for their future. The best outcome would be providing individuals with disabilities a sense of autonomy that would help with improving their overall life satisfaction. It will take collaboration among all providers and caretakers to ensure a sense of integration within our communities. Individuals with disabilities often have a unique take and offer a different perspective on life. It is time to stop labeling individuals with disabilities into a separate category that requires further assistance, but rather see them as a crucial part of society and realize that their unique set of skills may truly be an asset. To clarify any points that we may have missed during our presentation, we also came up with a set of questions. So to go back to the beginning, we have Sierra. You mentioned the Boost Aid program. Who is the Boost Aid program accessible to, and do you know the long-term benefits of the program?
Boost Aid is accessible to individuals who are enrolled in high school and have a formal diagnosis of autism. So these are individuals, the age range was 14 years old to 18 years old. The long-term benefits were only found up to 2 years following the study, with parents and the individuals who partook in the study saying or reporting back that over half of the individuals ended up finding some sort of extracurricular activity to join into an internship or even a career choice that aligned with the strengths that they discovered through the Boost Day program. They have been working on a gamification version of the Boost Day program so they can follow up with individuals who participate, and this will make it more accessible to them by a tablet or a phone. It's more user-friendly for individuals who do have disabilities, and it gives them a means of keeping track of their goals, their strengths and weaknesses, and even future things that they would like to plan for.
Thank you, Sierra. Jasmine, how common is it for employers to allow additional support during employment?
I do not think it's common at all. You know, a lot of the individuals with disabilities already have issues getting support just with regular employers instead of additional. The employment rate right now in 2018 for individuals with disabilities is 4.2% compared to the 8.6% of individuals without disabilities. And that comes straight from the United States Department of Labor. Another article also gave me insight that 35% of individuals with disabilities find employment compared to the 76% without disabilities ever since 2015. So it's only increasing in the unemployment rate and just making it harder for individuals to find employment, let alone additional support.
Thank you, Jasmine. Yvette, do you feel that the maximum monthly allowance of $1,180 a month is a sustainable amount?
If I can put it in an example, the RBT credit is available to anybody who has high school or equivalent. So it doesn't matter who gets it. So a person who does have a disability could potentially get it. They make $15 an hour. If they were to work part-time, say 20 hours a week, and they would just be barely over that limit. So it's not enough. I don't think it's enough at all.
It definitely does not sound like it's enough. Thank you, Yvette. Jacqueline, do you feel that the estimated number of victims of sexual abuse is underestimated due to the people who could not self-report?
Yes, I do believe that it definitely contributes to why the estimated number is underestimated. People who can't self-report, people with disabilities who have communication skills and not just communication deficits, people with no functional speech. I could think of a girl that I used to nanny, for example. She does not have functional speech. She has a very severe intellectual disability. She would not be able to tell me if someone at her school had touched her inappropriately or did something inappropriate to her. Other reasons are some people who are being victimized don't realize that they're being victimized due to some social deficits. Some people with disabilities could believe that they're in a healthy relationship when they're really being coerced by a coworker. And to even conclude, the rate of people with who've been sexual abused who don't have disabilities isn't even accurate, because there is a number of people who haven't self-reported.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Emily, you mentioned the No Secret program that has been introduced in Wales. Are there any similar programs here at home?
Yes, there are. I mean, there are countless advocacy groups. A lot of cities have their own advocacy groups, but I would like to point out a couple. And one is the Disability and Abuse Project, which is based out of California. And they do a lot of the same things that the Wales program does, where they, provide information for local agencies as to how to produce better policy making to decrease victimization. Also, nationally, the ARC and the NCCJD come together to do a lot of research on victimization and how to decrease victimization to help a lot of the police agencies and how they handle victimization.
That's great. It's great to hear that we do have similar programs here in the US. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, ladies, for all your answers, and thank you all for watching. We look forward to any questions or comments you guys may have.